News' Facebook page. That's Edward R. Murrow award-winning social media right there. And let's get right into the KUAM News Zoom room where we have standing by live Raquel Dizon Ike, whose parents were COVID-related fatalities. And Raquel, I mean, we had a chance to talk Saturday morning. Maria Yu LaVille and Joseph Escotillo LaVille, your parents. What a heartbreaking story, and we're just going to try and let you tell it. If you could, Raquel, let's start at the beginning. And, well, I guess first of all, we'll offer our condolences. I mean, where were you when you got the call that your parents were COVID positive?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I normally reside in Arizona these days, and we got a call that she was brought into the hospital for fever. And when I called the emergency, I was able to get into the emergency room, and I could tell they were in a kind of a panic, and they're like, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm the daughter. I'm calling you from Arizona." And then he said, "Does your mom and dad go around, or does your mom go around in public?" I'm like, "No, she's 92 years old. She stays home." And they immediately just said, "She's positive for COVID." And that shook me up. I called the rest of the siblings in a joint call, and then we quickly tried to figure out how we could get to Guam. We've been watching the news since March, since most of the mainland was already on lockdown or beginning procedures for lockdown. So we waited. I was due for another trip home. I was with them on Guam last year, back and forth for about 5 months. I immediately, I knew, I said the best chances for me to try to get to them was to test myself. I did that entire week, and I wouldn't get on the plane until I had my test results in hand. I tested negative that week for the virus, but the first thing I did was I tested for the antibody, which I tested positive for. So my family and I in Arizona had caught it in June, had fully recovered without hospitalization. I tested on July 20th, negative. And in the week of my departure, I went in Monday, Tuesday, and then again, I was flying out Saturday, but I decided to do another test on Friday, 24 hours before leaving, because it would have been 5 days by the time I got my first 5 days that week before landing on Guam that my test results would have been received. So I was doing everything possible to prove to the government that I'm good. I'm at least protected as best as I can, negative, and coming into a hot spot, that's something that people don't want to do. But I was just trying to get as close as I could to my parents and help in any way I can, because my father was not admitted. Well, he wasn't admitted with my mother, but he showed symptoms a few days later and then was brought in. I mean, they were living in the same house that I'm in right now. But we just a small little village, right, Maina. They don't go anywhere. It had to have been brought into the home, a good intended visitor, perhaps. But it was, GMH was doing the best they can to keep the relationship going and the information flowing. But I tried every day to appeal. I sent in my application for an emergency hardship the day before I flew, complete with all documents. The only test that was not received yet on that packet was the one I did 24 hours prior. So that result was sent via email, which was, by the time I landed in Hawaii, it showed me negative again. And I talked to several people in public health, to the guard, to any friends that we had that could help or knew somebody to get our information in front of. But I filled out the paperwork at the airport, put my home address. No one was in the house. They crossed it out and put Dusit, and then bust us over and put us in, or put me in. And I was hopeful still, thinking, okay, it's going to take some time for the government to look at it, And I got ready every day thinking I'm going to get released. And by Thursday, I just kind of lost hope, and just kind of had to concentrate on staying on the Zoom with our family. We have family in different states, and trying to get the information and share it at the same time. And it was the quarantine, like you said, Dr. Shea, is inhumane. And I thought, I'm a mature person, life experience, education, whatever. I can handle this. But I think when we got the news that my father passed on 9/11, I mean, I was just shaking. I was cold. There was nobody there, no physical, nobody physically there, but you get that routine knock at the door, here's your food on a stool outside. It's like a dog in a way. I mean, that's a bad comparison, but it was so trained. They tell us if you don't open the door within 3 knocks, they'll come in. And so I would run for the door, and it was just so trained within that period. Here's your food, and I know they try to make it pretty and with dessert and water and a container full of food, but it was just it didn't matter. It looked like they were just it felt like they were just trying to make it look more than what it really was, by making it seem as if we were getting home delivery like Grubhub or something like that, but that feeling of being alone, like, even connected to Zoom and this amazing technology, it was no human contact, no one, even just to, look at, hold hands, hug. I mean, and I didn't realize how much that really weighed. But that whole day I just cried. And my hotel room faces the water, and I could see people, from time to time exercising, and that was also punishment. You see such a beautiful sight, but you can't touch it. You can't be there. There's no comfort. And then I noticed that by the end of quarantine, I had food containers everywhere. I wasn't cleaning up. I wasn't getting ready for the day. And then that's when I realized, I said, this really affected me. I mean, I stopped being who I was. Quarantine, I understand, to keep the island safe, but I promised them, I said, I'm just going to be in Maina. I want to be home. I want to be in my house. I said, I'm not going anywhere. Here are my tests. Just let me go home, to where my family, where my mom and dad last sat to eat, to sit, to watch TV. I mean, I didn't know how much that all meant until then. And when I came out of quarantine, I didn't know what to do. And just, it was yesterday, I went to get newspaper, and 2 soups. And then I just started at Foodies in Barragata, and I just realized, I said, that was my habit when I was with them. I got them newspaper to read and soup. And, it shook me again. And we're trying to plan the funeral, and we're doing this through Zoom. My other siblings are trying to, they're arriving, and we're preparing for them to be locked up as well. So, this is all going to be, Zoom is like for meetings, for work meetings, this is not to foster relationships. You know, we can't grieve together. We can't, I mean, and I know that they were older, and people will say that, you know, they lived a long life. They were diehard Catholics, and I understand peace, and they raised us well in the faith. But this just added to, you know, cruel and cold, and this was not natural. This was not peaceful, and you know, I feel shame that this is how they had to go. You know, this is just not the way. And I love Guam too, and I respect what they want to do, but I don't know. In my situation, I just couldn't win my plea.
Did they
And you know, this is
did
a
they say
compassionate
why?
man.
Did they say why you were denied? Did you get
And
anything
no,
at
they. I mean,
all?
they alluded to you know, they said they understood that I wanted to do the right thing as a daughter, but they had to think of, you know, the community, and I agreed, and I said yes, I understand. I said, but I won't go anywhere. I said, just trust me. And that's what freedom is, right? Is that freedom, you know, for trust. You just can't tell people. And that is communism. You can't tell me, um, you know, you have to trust me as a part of the community that I want what's best for the community too.
Raquel,
Um, but you know, I just had to stop fighting them. I just had to sit there um, and you know, because time was ticking in the hospital. Time was ticking, and you know, I know that you asked me if I would send some pictures, and I was going to show you the pictures of them being restrained, but I said maybe that's too cold. I said, but that's what they had to do, and we asked over and over, like, why, and you know, and we asked nicely to the nurses because it's not their fault, you know, it's procedures perhaps, and they said that our parents are, you know, reaching for the mass, and at one point our mother pulled the IV, um, you know, but they couldn't communicate well, and they're masked, they have oxygen, and the nurses and doctors have oxygens, and even to the second and the minute that that last nurse came to check the vitals, we were on Zoom, you know, for at least 36 hours, you know, well, not the whole time because they had to charge the iPad, and I said, can you please charge it in there? You know how we can just plug to the wall, and they said they couldn't, and you know, something perhaps with electrical, you know, with things in the air. I said okay, but I said, do you have an extra one so you could just swap it out? I mean, they're still trying to figure it all out. I mean, eventually the images got a little clearer where they put tape on it. You know, they tape the bag so it's tighter. But those last couple seconds, we see the nurse grabbing my mother's pulse. He's waving at us. He's trying to talk through his mask, through the covered iPad, and then he wrote on a note and pen, and we're like, we can't see it, you know? I mean, you got to write it in perhaps magic marker on a whiteboard or something, um, you know, and we could tell by his frantic movements. I was like, okay, this is it, you know, and but it was so hard to see. I mean, so hard to see and to feel. I mean, you don't really realize how you feel, um, you know, having a screen between you. You know, if they died, different circumstances, you know, and not COVID and not quarantine, then maybe we'll have a little bit more peace. But you know, even still yet, I'm still secluded. I'm still, you know, my family arrived as fast as they could. Um, you know, there's a lot of sacrifices, and I appreciated that they came this way knowing that they'll possibly be locked up. And the same with my other relatives.
right.
They're boarding the plane tomorrow. Um, you know, today is actually my father's birthday, so it's kind of, you know, I couldn't sleep last night. I haven't gone into too much of their spaces in their house. I'm sitting here at the kitchen table, and I slept on the chair in anticipation for this interview. But today he would have been 96, and you know, I just thought he deserved better. You know, after his life of struggle and making a life here and building the home and the family. He built this home with his bare hands. He survived World War II. I mean, he was such a simple man. His little Fruit of the Loom shirts always had holes, and we said, "Dad, buy some shirts." And he's like, "These are bullet holes from the war." And I was like, "No, it's not." But he was a comedian, and he was loving and simple, and I wish they deserve better. And I know it's us that feel the pain, and now they're peaceful without, they breathe and move freely now. But I think for us, living is to know that that's the way they went. Is hard. And I and to add to what Dr. Shea was saying, my lab tests were from 3 different clinics, and so I tried to weigh those. I was like, okay, not false negatives, 3
Right.
different places.
Raquel, how soon after your father's passing were you released from quarantine? Did they make you do the whole 14 days?
That I had to do the whole 14 days. Yeah. So I mean, I'm still lost with the days. I don't even know how long I've been out. I have to actually look at a calendar. I came in on August 30th, and then got out September 13. And even then, I didn't know I could come out. I called on a Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday, and they kept saying someone's gonna call you. And then on Sunday I packed, which is a 13, and I said, how do I leave? Do I just walk out? And they're like, no, a guard's coming. I said, so when? They're like, oh, you have to wait because there's a lot of you. And I was like, oh. And then I've gotten previous information. I said, you have to wait the full 24 hours. So I arrived in the hotel about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So they said that I had to wait then to finish that full day. Then they said I could leave at 4:30. Then they said I could leave at 9 a.m. And then what ended it being is I was really, someone came to get me at 3:30.
Raquel,
So, I mean, yeah, it was hard.
when we touched base Saturday, you had told us that your mom passed while you guys were saying the rosary for your dad.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was a power outage in Maina as well. So we were getting ready, gathering. So we had my father's rosary going. And so, we're talking amongst ourselves, and we're doing this through Zoom. So we're looking at the slides, and we're telling all the nephews and the siblings, like, okay, we're switching now grandpa's name for grandma, so we're using the same prayer slides, and we're like having to, okay, say grandma. And like I said, they were devout Catholics, and we're like, well, our mom did this, she waited, those 7 days to give us some time to kind of get ready. I mean, Dad's was a shock, like, okay, here it is. I mean, they fought hard at GMH. I mean, they were there, longer than most of the younger people that come in and pass away. We saw my dad improve at one point, ask for water. We saw him eat, and we were so optimistic, like he's going to make it. But then we realized, looking back, that was his last chance. He was trying, because he looked out after our mother, and he was always afraid, like, who would be with her. They were inseparable, and every morning, he'll make coffee for her, and he walks with a cane, and he always thought of her first, but he didn't make it. He went first, and 7 days exactly we had. And so my older sister's like, Mom, you did it. Now we're going to pray for 18 days instead of the 9-day rosaries. You're getting us to pray more. We were trying to make light of it. But when I looked at yesterday, it's like, actually, it's connected by 1 day. That 8th day of my father's rosary is the first day of my mother's. So it's a continuous still yet. So I still think that was a sign from them. And with the power going out in Maina, I talked to our neighbors, and she's like, oh, that was your mother, wasn't it? I said, yeah. I said she had to let everybody know, to the. That's how I see it. I'm so superstitious. I was like, she did one farewell to Maina again. Um, and then at my aunt's house in Barragata, water started dripping from an air con that wasn't dripping, and it just suddenly stopped. I mean, it fell like heavy tears and just stopped. Um, and, those things. And we were, when we were trying to understand that our mother had passed and we're on Zoom, the meeting suddenly ended. Like after we realized what happened, and it ended. And you know how you have to end a Zoom meeting? You actually have to press the button end all.
Right.
I was the host for the meeting, and it just went blank. So we all had to scramble to get back into the hospital room to see, it's like, wait, is this right? Is this right? Are you right? There's no vitals. I mean, the pain of entering a Zoom meeting number and password, just delay. But, I don't know. I mean, my family is there, my husband and my children, and
Right. We're gonna bring on your husband,
Yeah.
Rach, but before we do, I wanted to talk to you because when we had touched base, you had mentioned there was one point because your parents were hospitalized at the same time with the coronavirus. There was one point you had told us that the staff of the Guam Memorial Hospital had put their beds side by side.
Yes, we referred when they said that my father was there was nothing more they can do. My sister asked if they could release him to Maina to die here with somebody, with him, to pass with him. And when that was also denied, we asked, can you at least put them together? And they did so. And we have to remember that those employees too are people from Guam, so they have, their emotions and cultures are ours. And they did it. And at first they were a couple feet apart because of the machines. And then the next time we zoomed in, they were together. And then the nurse told us that they were holding hands earlier. They look for each other every morning when they wake up, when they eat, when they sleep, when they go to the bathroom, every time. I mean, my father, I used to take him to Kmart, he'll get on that scooter and disappear to go get snacks. And my mom is just like looking for him, like, where's your dad? I said, we'll find him, and, his little wheelchair automated cart thingy, that they have there would be filled with like champolado and chips and cookies, He's not
essentials.
diabetic or anything, but those are, that's what he loved. Our routine was Denny's, King's, Shirley's, the old people stuff. They want to see other people and they want to get a free newspaper,
We're gonna.
Raquel, so none of your siblings, nobody here, they live on Guam? No one's here?
I have one sister who's isolating because she was around my parents before they knew. So that's just one, but I haven't, been able to be with her because since I know that I'm COVID free, I need to, make sure that someone stays healthy for the funeral arrangements. So we're at a distance too. So I see her on Zoom, and she's the only one here. But because she's also, being around with my parents could also, be compromised. But yeah, my big brothers, sisters, they are the ones hurting as well. Being not only Zoom like me, but just thousands of miles away and still, looking at this quarantine. But
and Raquel,
it's tough. Like I'm in their house and I'm all alone, and it's hard. I need to be here, but it's hard to be among their smells and their things. Yeah, so that's why I couldn't sleep last night.
we're gonna bring on your husband, Chad, and as if the story couldn't get any worse. Chad is currently in a government of Guam quarantine facility with your parents' 5 grandchildren, right? and they're being held in a government mandated quarantine for 14 days. So we're going to bring on your husband, Chad. Chad, our condolences, first of all. I know that you were getting choked up during the interview. I know it's got to be tough that you're not able to be there to console your wife during this. I mean, we can't even begin to wrap our hearts around this tragedy. We'll just start there, Chad. What's it like being on this Zoom, of all things, hearing your wife break down and talk about her losing her parents?
Yeah, it's tough, emotional, to not be able to be there for your wife, to see your kids hurt and not be there to get the comfort of their mother. But, trusting God and through his strength, I know we'll get through it. So,
How long have you been in quarantine, Chad?
what is this now? Day 6, I think. We got here, we arrived Wednesday night.
The 16th.
So not starting from that day. So I guess if you count Wednesday, it'll be day 6.
Did you also apply to be released early?
Yes, we filled out, all the necessary emergency early release paperwork. And like my wife, they have a line on there that says where you're going to quarantine. And I asked, okay, well, let me, put the Maina address. And I'm like, well, I have to ask my wife because I never remember the address. And if in Maina, everybody goes directions about coconut trees and broken cars in the Maina church to get there. So, and they told us that, oh no, don't fill that out, leave that blank. We're going to fill that in. So, it really wasn't much of a choice. You pretty much just kind of get cattled along and, just like a herd and follow orders and directions. And the next thing you know, you're on a yellow school bus and on the way to a place that, you're not familiar with.
Did you have to sign a form, like a voluntary quarantine or an involuntary quarantine, or advised of any sort of rights that you had that you could petition the court?
No, not at all. As far as, we were reading a lot of the things about, how the lack of information was provided to the incoming, the people on planes about their, ability to appeal or, do all of that. And I see that, there's been a few people that have been successful with the due process aspect of, being able to argue that aspect. You're really not given a choice. You really feel the pressure and the force of being basically like a prison sentence. You really don't have much of a choice. And it's kind of one of those things. I'm the only adult with my 3, my 3 older ones are above 18, but they're still my children. So if I was to say no, I don't want to do this or cause a ruckus, what's going to happen, right? Are they going to arrest Dad and throw him in a real prison, or how does that go about? So you kind of feel the pressures of it, and in the situation that we were not here for vacation. As much as we love Guam, we would love to. We came under different circumstances than most people. A lot of people are either coming back from work or maybe school, or maybe there might be a select few. I know both Rogue and Trevin was on coming from their UFC fight, so that's their work. But we're in a different situation, and it's not often that you have two parents, 2 loved ones pass away within a week. So we were hoping that they would be more considerate.
It's criminal, Raquel. It's criminal what they've done to you. So the first cut, you're sitting in this quarantine. Your father passes, you lose that. Now your husband's locked up with your boys. Just when you think it can't get any worse, what's your message to the governor, Raquel?
I know that they had done case by case basis, but I think they can't impede on the freedom of people. Not like this. Education is key with keeping the virus at hand, and to trust, our people to mask, clean, distance, and for businesses to do the same with their facilities. But even in the end, I would have saved them money if they let me go home. This is going to cost money to the people. you know, for my situation, I don't think I deserve to be there, and I don't think the others do. I don't know everyone's situation in there. I mean, we couldn't talk to each other anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was getting my food and I heard a voice, I was peeking, you know, I was kind of picking my head out to see who's there. You know, like, oh, I have a neighbor, you know, somebody's there. But I think it was a poor decision to do this so strictly. If people are coming here, you know, there's a purpose. So I don't know about the work contracts, but for me, this shouldn't have been my situation. I've gave them everything. I didn't take any shortcuts. I applied through their channels. I went through their website. I contacted everyone I needed to. I wanted to do it appropriately and not, you know, ask a favor. I said I wanted them to know that, you know, here I am presenting you the best information that science is providing. You know, if anything, you know, the people, that layer of protection, even with the antibodies, makes me better off than anyone that hasn't had it.
Right.
Hey, Chris,
you know,
can I share some stats?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, you know, since being, you know, locked up, you know, there ain't nothing else to do for the last freaking 6 days, right? So I decided to kind of just look at some data and, you know, just going off of from when my wife arrived on August 30th, I gathered some information, right? From August 30th, basically to September 19th, that's all I could find. And they were missing about 4 days. So, you know, kind of take that in mind, consider, but I think that's minuscule compared to what you're going to see, right? Basically, during that time, there have been 8,630 tests that were administered, right? Of those tests, 779 came back positive, right? That's a 9% ratio, right? Of those tests, 12 travel-related positives came out of there. Now, I'm not too sure if that's residents returning or non-resident visitors like ourselves coming back, but 12, okay? That's 1.5% of the total positive cases that came back positive. Now, if you do the numbers out of the 8,630 tests given, it's 0.14% of the travelers that tested positive. So that means 767 people are out there in the community itself, all right, walking around or maybe somewhere in isolation and whatnot. But according to what I could find, there was about an estimate of $51,000 a day that the government was going to spend, right, in this whole thing, this whole quarantine thing. $51,000 a day. We've been in jail basically for like 20 days already, whatever. That's over $1 million that have been spent during that time, right? And that quarantine went on from August 21st, according to what I found. So I'm saying, like, it's crazy that they're spending this money, but there's only a 0.014% of the tests that are positive coming from travelers. So they could be using this hotel room for, for isolation of those people in the community that want to get out of their home because they might have a uncle that is high risk, and they could provide them that opportunity, and people are misconstruing the terms of being, in isolation versus quarantine. Isolation means you're positive, you're confirmed positive, they're going to put you in isolation. A quarantine is like freaking getting thrown in jail innocent before even proven guilty, like we're not confirmed cases. So we're getting thrown in this mandatory quarantine when we are taking up a room, we're taking up money, finances from the government that maybe they could provide someone else locally to come in and use this room, have their provided for so that they can provide and protect their families and not have to stay in a negative household if that was the case. Now, what's going to happen down the road is that you can start to see if that they make this mandatory test positive for everyone that you got to get isolated and locked up, then I can see less and less people also getting tested because they got to provide for their families. They got to care for their families, this and that. So you're going to, it's the chicken or the egg mentality, but I think that this whole mandatory voluntary quarantine is to the point where it's not only just ridiculous, but it's detrimental to people's mental health. I mean, my wife was, no one knows the torture that she went through being alone, and then us in here, my 5 kids, we try to make do what we can. My daughter has a huge wrestling tournament coming up for the junior world team trials. My son is trying to get ready for a fight, and here we are. We were blessed to have family like that we know, like Coach Terry DeBolt and the Natalie and Len Calvo that brought us mats in here, brought us all the equipment we needed to be able to do so. But there's other people that might not have that blessings for people to come and help them here. So it's like, why don't they just, I can see 1 or 2 days being in quarantine. Like, you arrive, you take a test, you wait for your results, you're negative, boom, all right, you're good to go. And if you take a positive, then I say, you know what, people should be, have the right to say, hey, I want to continue to take a test because there's so many false positives. One of my NFL players tested positive for the Seahawks. They have to take him out, but then they tested him again, then a negative, and then he tested him again, and a negative. Then he needed 2 negatives in order to get back to practice. So I was like, what about all these people that have to provide for their families? You're gonna lock them up for 14 days and then give them a test on day 11, day 12, day 13.
Right.
So it's just kind of one of those things that I need to consider that. But it's the mental health. I'm a easy, lucky go guy. I'm like chill, relax. But I've never felt so stressed in my life being locked up in here. And I'm like, what happens if you have somebody who has anxiety, someone who has depression?
Right.
And you force them to come in here. I'm on the 20th floor. Let me tell you, that's a long freaking way down. You know what I'm saying? So who's going to be liable if somebody decides to play Superman freaking, and try to fly, because they're depressed or because they're stressed? Who's going to be liable for that? So things like that, they have to kind of look at, consider. It's like, these statistics show that the quarantine isn't really truly that necessary. The
Right,
testing
yeah.
is, test us. I have no problem testing us. I have no problem staying, 2 days. I mean, heck, not enough. I feel bad for the people here because I get on the phone with them and I'm usually a very nice, polite person and respectful, but I'm frustrated. So I tell the people on the other end, I say, listen, I'm sorry. It's not you. It's the system. It's the protocols that we have to follow. But, I might be a little rude on the phone because I'm frustrated, and, I'm this is a beautiful hotel. I've never stayed in a hotel in Guam because we always stay in Maina with family.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not the way I want to come to spend my time in a hotel. Like, this is a bad experience. I mean,
yeah.
we try to find positive things out of everything, but this is a really bad negative experience, and we're trying our best though.
Chad, I can hear the frustration in your voice. You said you're here with your kids. Your kids they're teenagers. Are they also in the same room with you? And how are they feeling?
Yeah, we have 3 adults. Our oldest is 22, then 20, and then 19, and then we have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. So we have 2 adjoining rooms. So luckily that they put us like that. But my kids are strong mentally. I mean, they're tough. They've all lived and were raised by us and coming with an elite mindset of warriors and things like that. But even for them, they see their mom crying on the Zoom. And to see grandma and grandpa pass is emotional. We understand that, with the COVID, no one was allowed in the hospital, but they took away that moment with their mom and dad. With their mom, they took away their moment with the person that brought them life into this world. And she's their everything. And for them not to be able to, hold her and kiss her and comfort her and vice versa, you can never get that motherly love from anybody else but their mom. I can't provide that for them.
Raquel, I want to ask you, Raquel, when we talk about inconsistencies that Dr. Shea had mentioned, the whole policy for exempting people from quarantine, I just can't make sense of it because we have a pretend farmer like Marcel Camacho who doesn't even have crops and is getting off on an essential farmer thing. And we've got other people who have got off, but here we have you. Coming back to Guam, you're losing your father while you're in quarantine. I just can't make sense of or rhyme or reason of why one person gets to walk free and other people are just stuck in there in a situation that you're in.
Yeah, and I really thought, I had a good case and I presented it as best as I could. I even had legal court papers showing guardianship, and then I had my test results. I had doctor's letters. We were trying to both appeal by compassion but also through the system. But, when I would hear that someone did come out, and I'm thinking maybe they they presented it better. I don't know, you know, I don't know how they could and I couldn't. But you know, it was hard. I had to surrender, and that wasn't a good feeling, because I thought it was wrong. But I had to grieve as well. So I had to choose one emotion, and I had to first, you know, deal with the grievance, and then also the possibility of my mother following my father, you know. And you always want to have hope, but in the end, you know, they both passed. So the system, I don't know. It was so different. I mean, even the first thing on I put down the Maina address, you know, our house address, and they just crossed it out. No questions. They didn't ask. They said, oh, what's this? And I said, well, I applied. I said, I brought 5 copies. I said, I will give it to anybody else here at the airport that needs to see it. They said, oh, go first to the hotel and then let them know, but they're not there until tomorrow. So I said, okay, I'll sleep through the night and try again in the morning. But then you get people calling for attendance to make sure you're in the room. I was like, if you're not allowing me, why are you calling to make sure I'm still here? You know, they call you in the room, check your attendance, like, oh, this is public health, you know, so and so, just making sure, you know. They'll ask about if any symptoms. I said no symptoms. You know, they're doing an attendance check. They do the temperature check every day, and they'll do my temperature check, but I was even below normal. You know, for the first couple of days, their thermometer was reading 96 degrees because they're standing too far away from me. That there's just so much air in between. I believe, I don't know what the science is for that, but I said I'm 96 degrees. I said, well, isn't 98 normal? You know, like, but they're just recording it on their paper. You know, even just inconsistencies with, I don't know if you saw my husband's Facebook, he was washing clothes in the bathtub by stepping on it. I didn't even know that they were doing laundry. You know, my paper said they were thinking about, you know, implementing it. So I'm either wearing the same dirty clothes or trying to hang dry inside an enclosed room, which is not happening. You know, it'll take 2 days to dry, really. Yeah, I don't know what their system was. You know, I had one piece of paper that was a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. So I had to make, you know, I had to try really hard to read the rules, and I kept reading it to make sure. I was like, do I know what it is? Even down to trash collection, you know, what's the procedures? I didn't even know, other than I didn't even know how to exit. I didn't know how even the quarantine ended or would end, you know. And the poor soldiers there, they don't know either. You know, they've got to check with somebody, to check with somebody, to check with somebody. Yeah, then I got confused. I said, when did Guam start doing this? You know, like, when did they do the mandatory off the plane straight into the hotel? You know, I don't know. Perhaps you guys have the answer when they first did it, because, you know, even they give you a paper and you have to sign it. Right? You have to sign it. There was no choice, or else I wouldn't be able to get out of the airport. Yeah, and if I couldn't get out of the airport, I couldn't continue my appeal. So I had to go to the hotel so I could continue and with my appeal.
I want to say this. It started over a month ago when we went back into PCOR 1, but again, things change with the quarantine, so I really can't say 100% for sure, but I want to say it is about a month ago when we went into this PCOR 1 and stay-at-home order. But going forward today, Chad, what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to call public health and try and get out of quarantine, you and your children? I mean, I'm not sure what else can be done other than, you know, seeking help from an attorney.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the big things for us to try to get out as fast as we can is because my 2 younger ones, one just is a freshman in high school and one is a middle school 6th grader, and the internet in here sucks. So, you know, for them to get on and get their work, a lot of times it's a struggle, right? So that was one of the big things I kept telling them. I'm like, look, my kids are going to fall behind in school academically. and they're both straight A students. Obviously, they get that from their mom. But for us, we're lucky that we have a lot of people that have been trying and help us and direct us in different avenues and who to contact and who to talk to. And so just yesterday, we're fortunate enough that they finally came by and they actually tested us, So we're hoping today that we can get the results back. And if we're all negative, we're hoping and praying and keeping our fingers crossed and doing all the other good luck charms that we're able to go and be with my wife and stay in Maina. And we told them, even if, when you lose two people that you love dearly to COVID, why would we be foolish enough to jeopardize someone else's life like that? We know the exact things that we went through. Why would we want to have somebody else do that? Now, I understand not everybody thinks that way, and you always have maybe a small minority of the people that are disrespectful and don't follow the rules, but we're not those type of people. And obviously they don't know that, so it's hard to say that, but I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. We just lost two parents, grandparents, great-grandparents to COVID. We're not going to go out. If they allowed us to quarantine for 14 days, we wouldn't have left Marina's house. We have enough family and friends out here that they could bring us food, water, and whatever necessities that we need, and so it just doesn't make sense. But we're hoping that, our tests come back today, and we're hoping that we have a positive outlook, a positive outcome from this crazy negative experience so far that we've had here today. And if that's the case, you'll see joy celebrations in Marina, because we'll be able to be with my wife and be able to hug her and hold her and mourn together of the loss of our parents.
Yeah, and see, Chad got tested yesterday. I didn't get tested to the 12th day. I was like, well, what's the use? I've been here already. I was like, I'm going to have to hang out here for 2 more days. So a 12th day test, even though I'm showing you blood tests and 2 other additional negative tests showing that I don't have the virus in my hand.
I don't know what to say anymore. I just can't. I can't even. And the story that you're sharing with us, the stories that we've heard from other people in quarantine, I think that, and these court decisions are changing things
And
up.
the exceptions.
And the exemptions, the very bogus exemptions that have been granted in a lot of cases. I think these are all just breaking down this whole quarantine system. I'm hearing from one of the doctors on the PAG that they're now looking at really implementing a 7-day test out.
They've been talking about that,
Right.
Chris,
Yeah.
for a while.
No, I know.
And the fact that we won't get into it because it's about your story.
Right, exactly. So, but things are happening as a reaction to what you've gone through. It's just so tragic that it didn't happen soon enough for you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that's
Chris.
how I feel. Yeah.
So again, our deepest condolences. Thank you, Raquel, so much for sharing your story with us over the weekend, your parents' story. I know that now that your mom has passed, you're going to be doing a double funeral on October 10th, right?
Correct. Yes. We just barely was getting started on my father's arrangements, and now we're adding our mother. So yeah, it's a different feeling. Our family endured a double funeral once previously in 1973. And they died also 7 days apart. So this is not a good thing for us. They were the matriarch and patriarch of our family here on Guam, and the quarantine just got in the way. And I feel mistreated like some other people. It's just not fair, and we're a faithful people, and we're going to see past it. Because we have to give them a nice, as best of a funeral as we can, a resting time, and even at that, with quarantine, we can't even celebrate in the same way that we normally would. Because we have to go through logistics, because I arrived at a different day, my other siblings coming out of quarantine. So we may not, do we get to stand together? We may not even get to stand together with some of our family.
Right.
So I don't know. We're gonna try to do something. Maybe we'll tie a rope to each other, and so we're connected in one way.
Raquel, I just want to apologize on behalf of the governor of Guam and her administration for what was done to your family. Again, I believe it's criminal, especially when people have no business skipping out on quarantine or skipping out on quarantine. So I apologize on behalf of our governor, our Department of Public Health and Social Services, and anyone else who you may feel has wronged you and your family. And again, our condolences. You're in our thoughts and prayers. Keep us posted, Chad.
Thank you.
God bless you. Raquel, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
hopefully
Thank you.
he'll. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and hearing us out.
All right. Take care. Again, our condolences.
Thank you.
God bless you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chad. See you.
Thank you. Same
Bye,
to you.
Raquel. Wash your hands. 8:19.